A single bell tower was the entire internet for a medieval town. Its sounds were not random noise, but a complex language, a sonic code that everyone understood. This was a world without instant messages or digital alerts, where the rhythm of life was dictated by bronze bells high above the cobblestones. They announced everything from moments of prayer to imminent invasions, weaving the community together with a shared soundtrack. By the end of this journey, you will be able to hear the hidden messages in these ancient chimes. We will uncover how a slow toll could reveal someone's age and how a frantic clanging could mobilize an entire city for defense. What forgotten stories do you think these silent towers still hold? Before a single bell tower rose over a town square, a lone watchman would walk the streets with a simple handbell. That single clear ring was the entire warning system for a village, a primal alert that cut through the daily noise. But this solitary sound was just the beginning of a sonic revolution. The leap from a handheld instrument to a monumental bronze bell swinging high in a tower was a transformation as profound as any in history. It demanded a mastery of fire and metal, a communal investment of wealth and labor that turned the bell tower into the ultimate symbol of a town's pride and identity. Casting these massive bells was an art form steeped in both science and secrecy. Artisans used a special alloy of copper and tin known as bell metal, a type of bronze that produced a clear, resonant tone capable of carrying for miles. The process itself was a high-stakes alchemy, with recipes for the metal mix often guarded as closely as state secrets. Many believed the success of a casting depended on the blessings of saints or even the addition of silver and gold to the molten metal, making each bell's birth a moment of both hope and superstition. The true breakthrough came with the development of the swinging bell, or tintinnabulum. Unlike a stationary bell that is struck, a swinging bell has a clapper inside that hits the rim as it moves. This innovation was a game-changer. By controlling the bell's swing, a ringer could now produce a vast range of sounds, from a gentle, mournful toll to a thunderous, urgent peal. This new sonic palette meant that a single bell could now speak in multiple voices. The final act of installing a bell was a spectacle in itself. Hauling a ton of bronze up into a tower required the strength of the entire community, a shared effort that physically cemented the bell's role as the town's collective voice. With this new technology, the stage was set for these towers to develop a language all their own. The deep, resonant call to prayer was the heartbeat of the medieval town. Long before mechanical clocks, the rhythm of life was set by the bronze voice of the bell tower, a practice borrowed directly from the monasteries that dotted the countryside. Inside those cloistered walls, monks lived by the rule of Saint Benedict, which divided the day and night into 8 prayer services known as the canonical hours. This sacred schedule was not meant to stay within the monastery walls. It spilled out into the towns, with parish church bells echoing the monastic calls. The day began in the deep dark of night with the bell for matins, a sound for the most devoted souls. Then came lauds at dawn, a ring that greeted the new day. The bell for prime marked the first hour of work, while vespers in the evening signaled the day's end and a time for evening prayer. Each of these rings had its own distinct character. A funeral or a requiem mass would be announced with a slow, mournful toll, a heavy sound that seemed to measure the steps of the mourners. In stark contrast, a feast day for a patron saint would be celebrated with a rapid, joyful peal, a chaotic and uplifting clangor that filled the entire town with energy. Religious texts from the era often called the bell the voice of God. It was not merely a signal, it was a summons. It called the faithful to lay down their tools, to pause in their market haggling, and to remember their spiritual duties. This created a powerful, shared rhythm that synchronized the entire community, from the wealthiest merchant to the poorest laborer, with the divine. In a world filled with the uncertainties of famine and disease, this sacred schedule provided a predictable and deeply comforting framework. It was the most frequent message the towers sent, a constant reminder of a shared faith and a higher purpose guiding their lives. But the bells were not only concerned with the soul's journey to the next world. They were also vital for navigating the dangers of this one. While the bells called the soul to prayer, they also told the body when to work. In an age before pocket watches, the Civic bell was the ultimate public timekeeper, a sonic clock that structured the entire economy. For a merchant in his shop, the distinct ring of the market bell meant he could officially unlock his doors and begin trading. For a laborer in the fields, its sound marked the precise start and end of his paid shift. This system operated on temporal hours where the daylight was divided into 12 equal parts, meaning an hour was longer in the summer and shorter in the winter. The bell's voice adapted to this fluid time, ringing at the key anchors of the secular day, dawn, noon, and dusk. This created a powerful secular rhythm that ran in parallel to the sacred one. One of the most important civic sounds was the curfew bell. The word itself comes from the Old French couvre-feu, which literally means cover the fire. That single, unmistakable peal in the evening was a direct command, instructing every household to douse their hearths and lanterns to prevent the terrifying spread of fire in a city built largely of wood. The coordination this provided was so vital that towns invested heavily in it. Surviving town records from across Europe show detailed payments to the bell ringer, a respected municipal employee. His wage was a direct line item in the city budget, as crucial as maintaining the walls or the water supply. This was not just a religious donation, it was a practical investment in public order. By synchronizing the daily activities of thousands of people, the civic clock enabled a complexity of urban life that would have been impossible otherwise. It allowed for scheduled court sessions, regulated labor contracts, and created predictable markets. This shared public schedule was the invisible framework upon which the medieval city was built, moving the community from a focus solely on sacred time to a new, coordinated secular reality. And this same bell that could bring a city to work was also the one that could tell it to prepare for war. Yet the same bell that brought order to daily life could shatter that order in an instant. When a watchman spotted smoke on the horizon or the glint of enemy armor, the bell's voice transformed. The steady, predictable tolling for prayer or curfew broke into a frantic, rapid clanging known as the tocsin or the alarm. This was not a call to reflection or work, but a scream of bronze that triggered a visceral, immediate response. It sent people scrambling from their homes and shops, their hearts pounding in time with the chaotic peals. The specific pattern of the alarm was a coded message in itself. A continuous, urgent ringing might signal a fire, a command for every able-bodied person to grab buckets and form a water chain to the nearest well or river. A more measured but still insistent series of strikes could mean an armed force was approaching, mobilizing the town's militia to the walls with bows, spears, and boiling oil. The duty of ringing the tocsin fell to the watchman in the highest tower, a person entrusted with the community's very survival. His was a lonely vigil, scanning the countryside for the first sign of trouble. Historical records from fortified towns describe strict protocols for this alarm. A watchman who failed to sound the bell in time could face severe punishment, for a delay of mere minutes could mean the difference between salvation and ruin. In that moment of crisis, the bell tower performed its most vital function. It transformed a dispersed population of individuals into a single, unified defensive force. The farmer dropped his plow, the baker left his oven, and the merchant abandoned his stall, all converging into an organized community driven by a shared sonic command. This was the bell not as a guide for the soul or a regulator of commerce, but as the beating heart of collective survival. The same bronze voice that screamed in alarm could also speak in a whisper of profound grief. A slow, mournful toll would begin, each strike separated by a heavy silence that seemed to hang in the air. This was the death knell, a sound that communicated mortality itself. More than a simple announcement, it was a complex message. The pattern of the strikes was a code telling the entire town exactly who they had lost. In many communities, 3 deliberate tolls signified the death of a child. 2 strokes marked the passing of a woman, and a single, resonant note announced the death of a man. Often, this would be followed by a sequence of rings, one for each year of the person's life. A life of 80 years would be measured out in 80 separate, solemn tones, a sonic biography echoing across the rooftops. This practice transformed the most private of events into a public, communal affair. Upon hearing the knell, neighbors knew their obligations instantly. They would stop their work to offer a prayer for the soul of the departed, or they would make plans to attend the funeral, offering support to the grieving family. This sonic ritual wove a network of social duty that held the community together in times of sorrow. Folklore and superstition clung tightly to the death knell. Many believed that hearing the bell unexpectedly when no one in your household was ill was a personal omen, a dire prediction of a death to come. Others told stories of the bell tolling on its own to mark the passing of a particularly virtuous soul, a phenomenon seen as a miracle. This shared sonic experience allowed the entire town to process loss collectively. It was a reminder that every life, from the eldest elder to the youngest child, was a thread in the community's fabric, and the bell marked the moment that thread was cut. The knell reveals that the bell's messages were not just for coordinating labor or signaling danger. They were deeply, intimately personal. And this personal connection to the bell's voice was forged in the very first moments of a person's life, in a ritual that welcomed them into the world. That same bell that measured a life in summer tolls could erupt into a chaotic symphony of pure joy. This was the celebration peal, the sound of a community's heart soaring. Where the death knell was slow and deliberate, this was a rapid, thunderous cascade of sound, a seemingly random crash of bronze that filled the sky. It was reserved for the most joyous occasions, a royal birth, a hard-won military victory, a wedding between powerful families, or the exuberant feast day of a patron saint. This was not a simple signal, but a complex performance. In England, this art evolved into the intricate tradition of change ringing. Teams of 8 or more ringers, each controlling a single bell with a long rope, would perform mathematical sequences that could last for hours. They did not play melodies, but rather cycled through every possible order of the bells, a feat of mental and physical endurance that required immense concentration and perfect teamwork. The resulting sound was a mesmerizing, ever-shifting tapestry of notes, a sonic representation of order emerging from apparent chaos. A town's bell ringers were local celebrities, and their skill was a point of immense civic pride. Towns would compete to have the most skilled team and the most impressive set of bells, because a magnificent celebration peal was a public declaration of a community's wealth, unity, and vitality. The energy of that sound was an irresistible force, an auditory beacon of happiness that compelled people to stop their work, smile, and join the festivities. It cut through the mundane routine of daily life, reminding everyone that their shared story was not only one of labor and loss, but also of triumph and celebration. The bell tower, therefore, held the entire emotional range of human experience within its bronze voice, proving it was the true heart of the town, capable of beating with both profound sorrow and unbridled joy. But who gave the bell its voice? High in the stone tower, the bell ringer stood as the human heart of this entire sonic system. This was no simple job of pulling a rope. The bell ringer was a unique blend of musician, civil servant, and athlete, a figure entrusted with the town's daily rhythm and its emergency response. His role demanded incredible physical strength, as controlling a swinging bell weighing hundreds of pounds was a brutal workout. It required a flawless sense of timing, for a bell that rang a minute too late could throw the entire market into disarray. But above all, it demanded absolute reliability. This was a person the entire town had to trust with their lives. Many ringers lived right inside the tower itself, their home a small chamber among the bells, forever immersed in their sound. They were paid directly from the town treasury, a line item in the municipal budget as essential as the night watch, or through special charitable funds left by wealthy patrons for this sacred civic duty. The complex language of strikes and peals was not written down in any manual. This knowledge was an oral tradition, passed carefully from an experienced ringer to his apprentice. He was the living guardian of the town's sonic identity, holding in his memory the precise patterns for a child's death, a royal wedding, or an approaching army. Over time, stories and legends often clung to these solitary figures, painting them as eccentric hermits who knew the town's secrets better than anyone. But their strange reputation belied an indispensable truth. The entire community depended on his vigilance and skill. He was the crucial link, the human element that transformed a massive, silent instrument of bronze into a living, breathing voice. By understanding the ringer, we connect a personal story to the grand, impersonal stone of the tower, remembering that every message ever sent was first felt in the pull of a rope and the strength of a single, dedicated person. That solitary bell ringer pulling his rope high in the stone chamber was only one part of a much larger instrument. The message was not just in the bell, it was in the tower that housed it. These structures were not built just for height or beauty. They were acoustically engineered to project sound as far as possible, turning architecture into a giant megaphone. Builders, working with an intuitive mastery of sound, designed every element for maximum reach. They placed the bell chamber high above the rooftops and treetops, ensuring the sound waves would travel over obstacles rather than crashing into them. The openings in the tower, the louvers, were carefully shaped. They were not just random holes, but precisely angled to channel the sound outward and downward, funneling the peal across the town and into the surrounding fields. The stone itself, that massive, dense construction, was a key component. It did not absorb the sound, it resonated with it, adding a profound depth and carrying power that made the bell's voice feel immense and authoritative. We can hear the difference in the architectural styles that dominated the ages. The earlier Norman towers, with their thick, sturdy walls and rounded arches, produced a powerful, low-frequency rumble that could shake the very ground, a sound perfect for commanding attention across a vast distance. Later, the elaborate Gothic spires, reaching ever higher toward the heavens, created a brighter, more piercing tone. Their taller, more slender structures and larger, ornate windows allowed the sound to escape more freely, creating a complex, shimmering peal that danced across a dense urban landscape. The strategic placement of these towers within a town's geography was a calculated act of sonic domination. They were built on the highest natural ground, often at the central crossroads, to ensure that no corner of the community, no alleyway or distant farmhouse was beyond the reach of the bell's voice. This careful architectural consideration reveals a profound truth. The medieval town was not just designed for visual appeal or simple defense. It was a built environment that spoke to its inhabitants, a community literally unified by the sound its structures could produce. The grammar of this sonic language was built entirely from rhythm and repetition. A townsperson did not need to hear a melody to understand the message, only the pattern of strikes and the silence between them. 2 deliberate rings, a long pause, and then 2 more might summon the council to a meeting. A single, unbroken, frantic peal was the universal cry for fire. In the French town of Chartres, the rhythm for a call to arms was 3 rapid strikes, a breath, then 3 more, a pattern that would send men rushing to the city walls. Over in the trading hubs of Flanders, the bell that signaled the opening of the market had its own distinct cadence, a quick, businesslike series of strikes that told merchants to unlock their stalls and begin the day's commerce. This was an auditory literacy that every person, from the oldest farmer to the youngest child, absorbed simply by living within the sound of the bells. They learned these codes not from a book, but from the daily rhythm of their own lives, from the way their parents would stop and listen or suddenly spring into action. The constant daily repetition of these patterns, year after year, generation after generation, etched them into the collective subconscious of the town. The system was so deeply ingrained that it became instinctual. A person would react to the alarm bell before their mind had even fully processed what they were hearing, their body already moving in response to a sound they had known since infancy. Decoding these patterns today is like piecing together the grammar of a forgotten language. We have to listen for the pauses, count the strikes, and feel the urgency in the tempo. Each combination was a distinct sentence, a command, or a piece of news that organized an entire society through sound alone. This shared understanding meant that a community could act as one, with a speed and coordination that would be the envy of any modern communication network. And just as this sonic language unified a single town, it also created a unique identity that set it apart from all its neighbors, a dialect of bronze that told you exactly where you were. The frantic alarm of a bell in an Italian hilltop town sounded nothing like the measured chime from a Flemish cathedral. This was not a single language, but a continent of distinct sonic dialects. A traveler moving across medieval Europe would have navigated not just by landmarks, but by the changing voices of the bell towers. In the wealthy trading hubs of Flanders and the Netherlands, the bells were the metronome of commerce. Their peals were orderly, predictable, and often melodic, coordinating the precise opening of markets and the shifts of guild laborers in towns whose primary concern was economic stability. But in the fractured, warring landscape of the Italian peninsula, the bells had a sharper, more urgent tone. City-states like Florence and Siena, living under constant threat of siege or internal revolt, perfected a tocsin that was a pure, rapid-fire clangor, designed to trigger an instant military-grade response from every citizen. The sound reflected a society perpetually on edge. Venture further east into the realms of Orthodox Russia, and you would encounter a sound completely alien to Western ears. Here, the tradition was not about swinging a single bell in a clear pattern, but about the simultaneous, thunderous clash of many bells. For major ceremonies, ringers would pull the ropes for a whole battery of instruments, from giant bass bells to tiny, high-pitched trebles, creating dense, dissonant, and overwhelmingly powerful chords that were meant to be a physical, spiritual experience rather than a clear signal. This was a sonic culture that valued awe and mystery over simple information. Even the architecture of the belfry changed the message. In England, towers were often square and sturdy, producing a focused, direct sound. In France, the taller, more ornate spires created a brighter, more complex peal that shimmered across the Parisian skyline. The local landscape shaped the code as well. A town nestled in a deep valley might need a slower, more resonant toll that could bounce off the hillsides, while a settlement on a wide, open plain could use a quicker, sharper strike that carried for miles without obstruction. This incredible diversity proves a profound point. The bell tower was not just a passive tool, but an active expression of a community's soul. Its voice was forged by local politics, by shared fears, by economic ambitions, and by deep-seated spiritual beliefs. The sound told you everything you needed to know about the place you were in, creating a unique auditory fingerprint for every single town. If you could understand these sonic codes, you held a map to the medieval mind itself, a map written not in ink, but in reverberating bronze. That sonic dialect of bronze was also a declaration of power. The right to ring a bell was a privilege fiercely guarded and constantly contested. In any medieval town, the soundscape was a battlefield where different authorities fought for the population's ears and, by extension, their allegiance. The deep toll from the castle keep was the voice of the feudal lord, a constant acoustic reminder of his military might and judicial power. Simultaneously, the clear peal from the town hall's new bell tower represented the rising influence of merchants and civic government. And cutting through both, the older, often more frequent calls from the monastery or parish church asserted the enduring authority of the spiritual realm. This created a complex and often tense acoustic hierarchy. Historical records are filled with disputes over this sonic territory. In many European towns, the city council passed laws explicitly forbidding local monasteries from ringing their bells during important civic announcements. They could not have the sacred bells drowning out the secular proclamations about taxes or market regulations. Conversely, a powerful noble might demand that his own manor bell be the first to sound an alarm, or that a special, extended death knell be rung for him, a sonic display of status that followed him even to the grave. These were not minor squabbles, they were fundamental struggles over who had the right to command the community's time, focus, and obedience. Controlling the bell meant controlling the rhythm of life itself. The sound told you who to work for, who to pray to, and who to obey when danger came. Every peal was a subtle reinforcement of the social order, a reminder of where power resided. This acoustic competition reveals the bell tower as more than a messenger. It was a powerful instrument of political influence, a pawn in a constant, silent game for the very soul of the community. That deep, resonant voice of the community came with an astronomical price tag. Casting a single large bell required not just faith, but a fortune. The raw material alone was a staggering expense, demanding tons of bronze, an alloy of costly copper, and even more precious tin. This was not a casual purchase, it was a municipal investment on the scale of building a new bridge or a section of the city walls. The master bell founder himself was a highly specialized and well-paid artisan, his secret recipes for the perfect tone guarded as fiercely as any state secret. The casting process was a high-stakes spectacle. A single flaw in the mold or a miscalculation in the furnace temperature could turn weeks of labor and a town's savings into a worthless, cracked lump of metal. Surviving financial records from cities like Ghent and Bruges detail these immense costs with meticulous care. The ledgers for their famous carolans, the elaborate musical instruments comprising dozens of bells, show line items that would have dwarfed the annual budget for the entire city guard. To afford such a treasure, towns would organize massive fundraising drives. These were not just requests for donations, they were community-wide events that could inspire near religious fervor. People would journey from the surrounding countryside, making a pilgrimage to the town square to donate their own metal objects, heirlooms, old tools, even simple kitchen pots to be melted down and transformed into a part of the town's new voice. This communal sacrifice meant that when the bell finally rang, it did not just symbolize the town, it was physically made from the possessions of its people. This profound financial commitment underscores a simple, powerful truth. The bell was not a luxury, it was seen as indispensable. A town was willing to spend a significant portion of its collective wealth for the right to be heard. Yet this very value made the bells a target. In times of war, the same bronze voice that had called men to defend the walls became a prize for the invaders. Countless community bells were looted and melted down to be recast as cannons, their songs of peace and order silenced forever to become instruments of war. The economics of bronze reveal that a bell tower was far more than architecture. It was the sound of a community's identity, purchased at great cost and defended with equal passion. That same bell that declared civic power and economic order also held a profound magical authority in the medieval mind. Its voice was not just a signal, it was a force that could actively shape the invisible world. People sincerely believed the sound of a consecrated bell could shatter storm clouds and deflect lightning, a practice where ringers would work frantically during a tempest, their peals a sonic shield against the heavens' fury. The clear, resonant tone was thought to physically drive away demons and malevolent spirits that lurked in the shadows, purifying the very air during times of plague. This was not a vague hope, it was a functional belief. The sound wave itself was imagined as a holy barrier, creating a protective circle of sanctified space that evil could not cross. This gave the bell an active, almost priestly role in the community's spiritual defense. But this power had a dark twin. A cracked bell that produced a discordant clang was not just a civic nuisance, it was a terrifying omen, a portent of famine, war, or the death of a ruler. The catastrophic fall of a bell from its tower was an event that could paralyze a town with dread, seen as the community's guardian spirit abandoning its post. Folklore is rich with these ominous tales. There are stories of bells in coastal villages ringing on their own with a ghostly chime when a ship was doomed to sink, their sound a lament for sailors who would never return. Other legends speak of cursed bells lying at the bottom of lakes, their bronze voices only heard by the damned or on the eve of a great tragedy. This deep-seated belief in the bell's own spirit was made explicit in the solemn ritual of baptism. A new bell was not simply installed, it was washed, anointed with holy oils, and given a name, just like a human child entering the faith. Inscriptions cast into the bronze often read, "I am called the name of the bell, I drive away pestilence," or "My voice calls the people, I mourn the dead." This was not poetry, it was a statement of identity and purpose. The bell was a living member of the community, a spiritual entity with a soul and a sacred duty. This magical dimension reveals that the medieval relationship with the bell tower was far more complex than simple utility. It was a bridge between the material world of cobblestones and markets and the unseen world of spirits, saints, and cosmic forces. The bell was the tool that mediated this constant interaction, a bronze tongue speaking to both humanity and the divine. You never had to wonder what time it was or what you were supposed to be doing. From your first breath to your last, the rhythm of the bells was the rhythm of your own mind. A child learned this sonic language not through lessons but through living. The frantic clang for fire made your heart race before you even knew why. The slow, measured toll for a death taught you the weight of community loss. Your internal clock was not set by a personal watch, but by the public voice of the bronze bells, telling you when to wake, when to work, when to pray, and when to sleep. This constant, reliable presence carved a deep groove of predictability into a world that was otherwise filled with the chaos of disease, famine, and uncertainty. The sound provided a framework, a mental map for navigating every single day. This shared listening created a powerful collective identity. Your sense of self was deeply intertwined with the community defined by the reach of your town's particular bell. You were not just an individual, you were a person who heard this specific chime for the market, this unique peal for the festival, this mournful knell for the dead. The soundscape was your home. This fostered a powerful, inescapable sense of we. Your time was not your own, your attention was not your own. It was a public resource synchronized with everyone else. Compare this to our modern world, where we each carry personalized sound environments in our pockets, with private playlists and individual notifications. Our mental landscapes are visual and isolated, while the medieval mind was fundamentally auditory and communal. The bell tower did not just send messages, it shaped consciousness itself, weaving every individual into a single, shared mental tapestry where the community's heartbeat was your own. High up in the bell chamber, the rope in the ringer's hand was the final link in a complex mechanical chain. Early ringing was a crude affair, often just a direct pull on a rope tied to the clapper inside a stationary bell. This produced a simple, limited sound, but the desire for more control and a greater range of expression drove a technological leap. The breakthrough was the full circle wheel, a large, wooden-spoked apparatus mounted to the bell's headstock, the massive beam from which the bell itself was suspended. A rope was tied to the rim of this wheel, and by pulling it, the ringer could now swing the entire bell, a ton of bronze, in a complete 360-degree arc. This was a revolution in control. Now the ringer could dictate the exact momentum, starting the bell with a gentle tug and building it to a thunderous swing where the clapper struck the sound bow with immense force. This precise control over timing and impact was the absolute prerequisite for the intricate mathematical sequences of change ringing. The chamber itself was a forest of massive machinery. Each bell hung from its own stout headstock, often made from seasoned oak to withstand the tremendous forces. A labyrinth of ropes snaked down through holes in the ceiling, each one color coded or with a special knot so the ringers below, unable to see their bells, knew which rope controlled which voice in the bronze choir. This system demanded constant, careful maintenance. The ropes would fray from the relentless friction, the wooden wheels could crack under stress, and the metal bearings that allowed the headstock to pivot needed regular greasing. The physical danger was ever present. A misfired swing or a rope snapping under tension could send a bell crashing through the chamber floor, and a careless hand could be brutally caught in the flying ropes. This was not a job for the faint of heart. The evolution from a simple pull to this sophisticated mechanical system is a story of human ingenuity in the service of sound. It was a direct response to the community's need for a more nuanced and powerful voice, proving that the language of the bells was not just born from artistry, but from the greased wheels and stout ropes of brilliant engineering. But the true terror was not the sound of the bell, it was its absence. There were moments in history when the bells were ordered silent, and this sudden quiet was more shocking than any alarm. When a pope placed a town under an interdict banning all sacred rites, the bells were the first to fall mute. This was a spiritual punishment, a disconnection from the divine that left the daily rhythm in tatters. The silence felt eerie and unnatural, as if the community's very soul had been severed. Chroniclers of the time described a profound unease settling over the population, a sense that the world itself was holding its breath. The most harrowing of these silences came with the Black Death. As the plague swept through Europe, the sheer number of the dead made the constant tolling of the death knell unbearable. The sound became a relentless, grim count that never ceased, a sonic manifestation of the despair hanging over the streets. authorities in city after city made the agonizing decision to order the bells silent. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy and ominous, broken only by the rumble of death carts and the cries of the grieving. Without the bells, people lost their bearings. There was no call to prayer for solace, no civic chime to structure a disintegrating day, no shared sound to remind them they were still a community. This enforced silence laid bare a terrifying truth. The townspeople were utterly dependent on their sonic network, not just for order, but for their very sense of reality and psychological comfort. The absence of the bell's voice revealed its true function. It was the steady heartbeat of the town, and when it stopped, the body felt itself beginning to die. That profound silence after the plague revealed a terrifying dependency, a world held together by sound. Yet the system's eventual decline was not so dramatic. It was a slow erosion. The sonic codes did not shatter, they were simply outcompeted. The invention of the mechanical clock allowed time to escape the tower and move into the home and the pocket watch. The rise of newspapers meant news could travel in silence, read privately rather than announced publicly to the entire community at once. Each new technology, from the telegraph to the telephone, chipped away at the bell's monopoly on urgent information. Its voice, once the town's entire nervous system, was gradually relegated to a few specific, often ceremonial, roles. But this was not an extinction, it was a transformation. The medieval soundscape did not vanish, it evolved. You can still hear its direct descendants all around you. The mournful toll of a church bell for a funeral is the unchanged echo of the medieval death knell. The clear, piercing call of a bugle playing the last post at a memorial service serves the exact same function as a civic bell honoring a fallen hero, a coded sound that commands collective respect and remembrance. Even our most modern emergency sirens are simply the tocsin updated with electricity, a universal, urgent shriek designed to trigger an immediate, community-wide response to danger. The fundamental human need for swift public communication never went away. It just found new tools. In a deeply revealing way, the personalized notification sounds on your phone are the logical endpoint of this evolution. Your device is your own private bell tower, its chirps and chimes forming a personal code only you understand. A single buzz might signal a new message, a specific ringtone identifies a caller, and a frantic, repeated alert warns of an incoming storm, all delivered directly to your pocket. This is the medieval soundscape, miniaturized and individualized. Recognizing this direct lineage changes everything. It allows us to see the great stone towers and their bronze voices not as primitive artifacts, but as the sophisticated foundation of our own hyper-connected world. They were the original network, the first system to code information into sound and broadcast it to an entire community, proving that our drive to connect is woven into the very fabric of human history. The frantic alarms and measured tolls of a single bell were a powerful language, but for a true symphony, you had to journey to the Low Countries. Here, in the wealthy trading cities of Flanders and the Netherlands, the bell tower reached its ultimate artistic expression with the Carolan. This was not merely a set of bells, it was a massive, public musical instrument comprising at least 23 individually tuned cast bronze bells. A musician known as a Carolaneur could sit at a special keyboard, a console with wooden batons for the hands and pedals for the feet, and perform intricate melodies and complex harmonies high above the town square. The entire tower was transformed into a giant, resonant harp, its strings forged from bronze. Cities like Mechelen in Belgium became legendary for their carolans, their instruments so sophisticated and their players so skilled that the town earned the nickname the capital of the Carolan world. The Carolan was a true public performer, a rock star of the Renaissance. From his perch, he would fill the air with popular folk songs that everyone knew, with dances that made people smile in the streets, and with sacred hymns that deepened the spiritual atmosphere on a Sunday. The instrument still performed its ancient duties, marking the hours with a brief, melodic chime, but it also gave scheduled public concerts. People would gather in the square below just to listen, to be swept up in a shared musical experience that was completely free and available to all. Owning a magnificent Carolan was a declaration of a city's wealth, culture, and technical prowess. It was the fusion of pure function and high art, the moment the town's voice learned to sing. This was the pinnacle of the sonic code, where the simple message evolved into a public concert, proving the bell tower could be both the town's clock and its concert hall. The same bell that sang for a festival also possessed a voice of cold, unyielding authority. It was the sound of the law itself. When the bailiff needed to summon the entire town to the market square for a crucial announcement, he did not send messengers. He ordered the bell rung in a specific, commanding rhythm. This was the auditory administration of justice, a system where sound legitimized power in the most public way imaginable. Court records from medieval towns are filled with references to the court bell, or curia bellum. Its distinct peal was a non-negotiable command for every household to send a representative to witness a trial, or to hear a new decree read aloud by the town crier. The law required public proclamation to take effect, and the bell guaranteed the public was there to hear it. One of the most potent legal sounds was the ban bell. This peal signaled the reading of a banishment order, a sentence that severed a person from the community forever. As the bell tolled, the offender's crimes would be declared to the assembled crowd, their property forfeited, and their person exiled beyond the town walls. The bell was literally drumming them out of town, its sound erasing their presence from the social fabric, but the most chilling legal function was reserved for the scaffold. On the day of a public execution, the bell's voice transformed into something grim and ceremonial. It would toll in a slow, deliberate march as the condemned was led to the gallows or the chopping block. This was not a chaotic alarm, but a measured, inexorable countdown. At the precise moment the sentence was carried out, the bell would often strike a single, resonant note that hung in the air, a sonic seal on a life extinguished. This practice was not mere spectacle. Chronicles from executions describe its purpose clearly, to serve as a stark warning to every other citizen. The sound was meant to inspire a visceral fear, a powerful deterrent burned into the memory of all who heard it. It created a direct sensory link between crime and terrifying punishment. The law bell stood in stark contrast to the comforting chime of the prayer bell. One offered spiritual solace and a connection to the divine. The other delivered the harsh reality of earthly judgment and social control. This dual nature reveals the bell tower as the central nervous system of civic power, capable of both nurturing the community and disciplining it with a single bronze tongue. You could not escape the voice of the bell. Our modern world is built for the eyes, a silent movie of screens and text, but the medieval city was a symphony for the ears. From the first light of dawn, your day was shaped by an unending orchestra of sound. The rhythmic clatter of cart wheels on cobblestones, the distinct cries of street vendors hawking fresh bread or fish, the distant hammering from the blacksmith's forge, and the constant murmur of crowds in the market square all created a dense, bustling soundscape. Yet above this entire human cacophony, one sound reigned supreme, the bronze voice of the bell tower. It was the loudest, clearest, and most authoritative sound in that world, a tone that cut through all other noise to seize the collective attention of the entire town. There were no private, quiet spaces to retreat to, no noise-canceling headphones to create a personal bubble of silence. Your life was lived entirely within this shared auditory field, an inescapable immersion in the community's collective existence. This constant public soundtrack fostered a psychology that was fundamentally different from our own. Your internal sense of time, your schedule, your very mood were all shaped by external, communal sounds rather than by internal, individual choice. The bell's command to pray or to work was not a suggestion you could ignore. It was a sonic fact that structured the reality of everyone around you, pulling your personal rhythm into alignment with the town's heartbeat. To understand the true power of the sonic code, you must try to feel what it was like to live inside that sound, where the line between your own thoughts and the community's will was blurred by the ever-present peal of bronze. The bell founder arrived in town like a visiting sorcerer, his wagons laden with mysterious tools and sacks of clay. His first task was to dig a massive casting pit right there in the churchyard, a temporary forge where the town's new voice would be born from earth and fire. He began not with metal but with brick and loam, building a core, the solid inner shape of the bell. Over this, he meticulously crafted a false bell from wax, sculpting it to the exact thickness and profile he desired. This wax model was his canvas, and he would inscribe it with holy texts, his own name, and dedications from the townspeople who had funded this great endeavor. Then came the most delicate part, encasing the wax form in a thick, heavy mold of fire-resistant clay. This outer coat was a shell of secrets, holding the bell's future shape locked within. The moment of truth was the pour. A misstep here was catastrophic. The founder and his team would heat the bronze in a giant furnace until it glowed as a liquid sun. Using heavy clay ladles, they would carefully channel that searing river of metal into the mold. The air would fill with the smell of burning clay and the terrified prayers of the onlookers, for if any moisture remained in the mold, the steam would expand with explosive force, shattering the clay and spraying molten bronze in a deadly shower. A single flaw, a hidden bubble of air or an impurity in the metal, could result in a cracked bell, its voice forever mute or horribly discordant. The entire community held its breath until the metal cooled and the mold was broken open. To see a perfect, gleaming bell emerge from the shattered clay was seen as a miracle, a sign of divine favor. The founder's skill was everything, his secret recipes for the bronze alloy, and his intuitive understanding of acoustics directly shaping the tone, resonance, and carrying power of the final instrument. He did not just cast metal, he gave the town its unique vocal cords, leaving his signature permanently inscribed in bronze for generations to hear. A conquering army understood that a town's true heart was not just in its walls, but in its tower. To capture a city was one thing, but to silence its bells was the ultimate psychological victory. The moment invaders breached the gates, one of their first targets was the bell tower itself. Soldiers would race through the chaotic streets, not toward the treasury, but toward the belfry, aiming to seize the ropes and stop the frantic tocsin that was still coordinating the defense. For the townspeople, the sudden, unnatural quiet that followed was a more profound surrender than any lowered flag. It was the sound of their community's voice being forcibly gagged, a clear signal that their world had ended. Historical chronicles of sieges, like the brutal sack of Rome or the fall of Constantinople, often mark the silencing of the bells as the final, mournful note of the city's freedom. But the invaders' work was not done with mere silence. The ultimate humiliation was to then ring the town's own bells in a crude, triumphant peal. This was not the measured rhythm of civic order or the joyful chaos of a feast day. It was a mocking, discordant clangor, a sound that proclaimed the victors now owned the very voice of the conquered. They would use the bells to summon the surviving population to the square to hear their new master's decrees, a brutal demonstration that the old authorities were gone and the bells now answered to a different power. Yet the defenders were not passive in this sonic war. Knowing the bells were a target, they sometimes turned them into a weapon of disorientation. During a night assault, a garrison might order its ringers to create a constant, thunderous, and random peal. This unending noise served a dual purpose. For the defenders inside the walls, it was a continuous roar of defiance that boosted their morale. For the attackers scaling ladders in the dark, it was a terrifying, mind-numbing cacophony. The overwhelming sound made it impossible to hear orders, to coordinate movements, or to sense the direction of a counterattack, sowing confusion and fear in their ranks. This martial dimension reveals the bell tower as a strategic asset as critical as any store of grain or cache of weapons. Its sound could mobilize a population for defense, and its capture could break their will to resist. In the calculus of medieval warfare, the bell was not just a tool for communication. It was a weapon to be wielded and a prize to be won, its bronze tongue capable of either saving a city or sealing its doom. A rider on a lathered horse thundered into the town square, shouting a single, breathless phrase to the watchman. Minutes later, the bell tower erupted in a sequence of peals the town had never heard before. This was not a call to prayer or a warning of fire. It was the sound of history itself arriving. Before the printing press or the radio, the bell was the original breaking news alert, capable of delivering world-changing information to an entire population in moments. The outcome of a distant battle, the death of a monarch, the election of a new pope, these events required immediate public knowledge, and the towers provided the network. Each major piece of news had its own pre-arranged sonic signature, a special code understood by the bell ringers in every significant town. A rider would arrive from the previous city with a sealed message containing the specific pattern to ring. The local ringer, upon hearing the news, would immediately rush to his ropes and send the same coded message booming out over his own community. Then, a fresh rider would be dispatched to the next town, and the next, creating a relay of sound and speed. Consider the news of the English victory at Agincourt in 1415. The moment the outcome was certain, a messenger was sent toward the coast. In the first English town he reached, the bells rang out in a triumphant, complex peal reserved for great military victories. That sound was the signal for another rider to begin his journey inland. Town by town, the victorious peal leaped across the countryside, a wave of sound moving faster than any single person or horse. A farmer in a field 50 miles inland would hear the bells of his own village ring with that unfamiliar, joyful clamor hours before the original messenger could have possibly arrived. He would know, without a single spoken word, that his king had triumphed in a faraway land called France. This system transformed individual, isolated towns into active nodes in a vast, decentralized information web. It was an auditory internet where each bell tower functioned as a router, receiving a data packet of sound and broadcasting it to its local network while simultaneously passing it along to the next node. The message was standardized, instantaneous, and public. Everyone, from the lord in his manor to the beggar in the street, received the same information at the exact same moment, creating a shared, simultaneous experience of history. This was the birth of mass media, a bronze chorus that could unite a kingdom with a single, resonant sentence. That steady, predictable rhythm of the bells began to falter in the 17th century, not with a bang but with a quiet tick. The invention of the spring-driven balance wheel made personal pocket watches a reality for the growing merchant class. For the first time, a person could carry their own private timepiece, a small window into a schedule that was no longer dictated by the public voice in the tower. The Civic bell's most fundamental role as the town's only clock was suddenly obsolete. Why gather in the square to hear the noon chime when you could glance at your own watch? This was more than a technological shift, it was a revolution in consciousness. The Enlightenment championed individual reason over collective tradition, fostering a new, secular worldview that actively chafed against the bell's communal authority. The sound that had once represented divine order and social unity now felt to many like an imposition, a relic of a superstitious past trying to command a population that was learning to think for itself. Then came the roar of the Industrial Revolution, which drowned out the bronze peals with a new, relentless soundscape. The shriek of factory whistles replaced the call to work, and the chugging of steam engines created a constant, rumbling background noise that made the bell's voice just one sound among many, and often a less urgent one. The final, decisive blow to the bell's monopoly on information was the telegraph. A message that once took days to travel by rider and relayed bell codes could now cross a continent in minutes, transmitted in silent clicks through a copper wire. Urgent news was no longer a public event announced to everyone at once, but a private communiqué decoded by a trained operator in a quiet office. One by one, the bell's essential functions were stripped away. Its role as timekeeper was taken by the pocket watch. Its duty as news-bearer was usurped by the telegraph and the newspaper. Its authority as a moral and spiritual guide was challenged by a more secular, scientific age. The social cohesion the bells had once represented began to fragment. The sound that had unified the community for centuries became, for a growing portion of the population, a nostalgic echo, or worse, a symbol of an outdated authority they were eager to leave behind. This was not a sudden silencing, but a slow, profound transformation in how society related to sound, to authority, and to the very idea of community itself. Our journey through this sonic landscape reveals the bell tower as the true heart of the medieval town, a central nervous system built from bronze and stone. It was not merely a structure, but a sophisticated device that encoded the entire spectrum of human experience into a language of rhythm and resonance. Time, danger, faith, and law were all translated into strikes and peals, creating a shared mental map for every person in the community. The rhythmic calls to prayer synchronized spiritual life, the frantic alarms mobilized physical defense, and the mournful knells processed collective grief. This constant public soundtrack wove thousands of individuals into a single, cohesive whole, a reality almost impossible to grasp in our fragmented, digital age where each of us lives inside a personalized bubble of sound. Yet the legacy of these ancient codes is all around us. The piercing wail of an emergency siren is our modern tocsin, a universal shriek demanding immediate attention. The melodic chime from a town hall clock is the direct descendant of the Civic bell that once regulated the workday. Even the personalized pings and buzzes from your phone are the logical endpoint of this evolution, a miniature bell tower in your pocket sending coded alerts meant for your ears alone. The next time you hear a bell ring from a distant church or a bicycle on a city street, pause for a moment and listen closely. Beneath that single note, you might just hear the echo of a 1,000-year-old message, a faint reminder of a time when an entire community breathed, worked, and lived together, connected by the one voice they all shared.